people have been learning to use AppScript in a document or a spreadsheet or build small things. And you can actually also leverage the whole AI things.
Welcome our viewers to the Developer Spotlight. Today we're tuned in with Riël from the Netherlands, and on his LinkedIn profile, you see he's the owner of Zzapps. So now the question is, Riël, what do you guys do at Zzapps?
Thank you. Thank you for introducing Chanel. Well, we primarily are a Google Workspace reseller, and we focus a lot on the small and medium businesses, which is for us a very interesting business to focus on with Zzapps, because the small and medium business in the Netherlands is quite big. We not only want to offer the Google Workspace licensing, but we want to have some additional value. And mostly it's about just adding some development tasks that we find out, building some solutions that come up. And Google Workspace, and especially Google Apps Script and the add-ons, make it possible to do this fast and quite, well, I wouldn't say cheap, but easy, and something that's also possible for smaller businesses. And that makes it very interesting. You have a lot of different questions that come up, and the Google platform gives us a lot of opportunities to try new things and to find more solutions to dive into, especially of course lately with things that come out, the add-ons, and of course AI, which is a hot topic right now.
Yeah, you mentioned AI. You did share an interesting article that you're drafting at the moment. It's about semantic search powered by advanced language models. Can you tell me what the challenge was that you were trying to solve when you came up with that idea?
When I search for something, and search was always the thing that was what Google Workspace was good at, but if you have a lot of documents or a lot of emails, then often you will remember that you wanted you had a conversation, or you had a document about a certain subject or something described. It's very hard to pinpoint it using some exact phrases that you need to search on. It's easier to ask and describe the thing that you're searching for. Like, I need this document where we talked about X and Y, and where it was mentioned that this and this would happen. So where is this? And this technique and technology makes it possible to actually search on these kinds of phrases and get those results. And I had been testing it with some poems, where I had AI generate some poems where things happened, and try to do that. And it was so easy, even to do it with AppScript. So, and that's what I was writing this article about. I will release it in the next few days, probably.
Where can our viewers find this article if they're interested in learning more about this?
Yes, it will be on our website, but I'll also share it on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And so I'll try to publish it as much
Very
as I
good. So
can.
I guess that's a call to action to follow you on LinkedIn in that case to not miss out on this article.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that the whole AI thing is for many people a bit vague. So what can you do with it? And I know there are lots of developers and really try and get started with AppScript. And that's what I liked about the thing that I was building, to do it actually with AppScript. Most of the examples that are with Google are for Python and Jupyter notebooks, which isn't very technical. It's doable, but it's hard to integrate it into the things you already know. People have been learning to use AppScript in a document or a spreadsheet or build small things, and you can actually also leverage the whole AI things using the same endpoints as you do in these examples. So I think that's nice to put it really into your work.
In practical terms, explain how do you go about, integrating AI into an AppScript project?
To integrate AI with AppScript, you need a source of data, which is with AppScript very easy. You can read documents or you can read spreadsheets, all these contents, and you will need an endpoint to store your vectors. That's what it's called, or embeddings, or even just send the data to. And AppScript, of course, is able to communicate with these APIs. All the scopes that you need are implemented in AppScript, so it's nothing more than just adding the scope to your AppScript file, authenticate it, and read the doc, send it to the AI system, and ask questions. Essentially, that's what it's about. It's just figuring out what AI and what the commands are. But yeah, if you read the documents, then you can go and start trying out and just, like, let's play the function and see what happens. And that's what makes AppScript so great. It's easy to tinker with and try other queries and try other prompts and see what's happening, because you can just play it and play it over and over.
Maybe let's back it up quickly. Tell me, what got you started developing solutions on Google Workspace? What was your motivation?
When we were starting with Workspace, there were a lot of things that people wanted to do but didn't do very handy or were struggling. And these questions, of course, came to us, and we tried, okay, what solutions are there available? And back in the days, like 10 years ago, AppScript was, I think it's about 10 years old. But it wasn't that known yet, and we ran into it and saw that we can actually give these solutions to the customers using AppScript. And to be honest, I started development with AppScript. It was actually my first lines of code I wrote. So I ran into development with AppScript itself. Making it possible to give a solution to the customer was what got us into it. And then, of course, everything opens up when you dive into the APIs, dive into more advanced things that you can do. And eventually we grew with the company to have a lot of developers here just within our company that are able to go beyond AppScript and really do professional development with everything that's needed, from testing to proper pipelines, DevOps, that kind of things.
And how does this work? Do you have to inform your customers about, the development you can do or the solutions you can create for them? Or is this something that they proactively come to you with, like, we have this challenge, can you create a solution?
Mostly it's the curiosity we have for our customers' issues. So I really want to ask, okay, what's the thing that's struggling with? Where can we help? I do say that we want to do more as just implementing Google Workspace. So I'm really, really curious every time. So what things are you running into? And where can we provide something extra that helps you forward? We do get the questions from customers like, how can I extract certain parts of a data set that I really need? And that's things that were impossible like a few years ago. Mostly it's really seeing what people are doing. Because when you help people getting the best out of Google Workspace, you always ask about internal processes. What are you using? Why are you using it for? What are you using it for? How do you use your Gmail? And there are some classic cases that everybody knows, how email is being copied and labeled and sent forward and copy pasted into other applications. You know it, and that's why you really get the trigger. Okay, let's just say we can build you something. What would you say if we can make this a lot easier for you? And that's mostly the start of something in development.
You're a Google developer expert for Google Workspace. And I was wondering,
Yeah,
how long have you been an expert?
I think it's 8 years. Actually, I was surprised that it was that long already. Yes, and it's one of the greatest things that happened actually in my career, to be part of the Google developer expert team. I met so many great people and inspiration, knowledge, and of course feedback. You have a lot of people you can chat or ask that you meet when you go on an event. That's one of the richest things that I got from the whole Google career, to be part of this experts team. When you have found out, or when you have created these kinds of solutions on AppScript, or when you have been tinkering around and found out some cool stuff, I think it's just writing it out and putting it out there for other ones. It's what it's all about.
So, your preferred way is to write blog posts about what you create?
Yeah, so I have time to think about what I want to say and to write down. I know some people are much easier making a video. Actually, for this last one, I tried to make a video, but I stopped and just wrote a blog post. And to be honest, I like to read blog posts myself, so I can put it on the one screen and try to mimic everything else on the other one.
From what I can tell, from the outside looking in, I know you do a lot with alternate runtimes at Zzapps. What is the reason you started with that? So you just said, you started as a developer with AppScript, but at a certain point you moved on. And what's the reason for that?
Actually, we started with AppScript and we moved along the Google Cloud platform. So eventually we stepped into Firebase. Then came Firebase Functions and Cloud Functions, of course, which was like an improvement. You could do a little bit more that you could do in AppScript and really use the APIs Google had. Fast forward to Cloud Run, and eventually we were just building a Dockerized application in Node.js and put it onto Kubernetes. Like that's where we like to be now. And having a lot of applications and backends running into these containers, into Cloud Run, it was quite interesting to see that, hey, we can build an add-on, but leverage everything we already had built in these backends. We just had to add an endpoint to it that returns these JSON files. So creating an add-on was suddenly something that was really like a very small step because we had all the logic already. And it was logic that you couldn't specifically run an app script because it was heavy. It was big database connections, of course. So maybe something that should parse videos and upload a lot of stuff, where app script just was not capable enough and fast enough. And that's why we were start using alternate runtimes. Another thing, but that's my preference, is that I really like to build JSON structures. And in AppScript, it's more like describing new card, add a section, and makes it for me a lot harder. But of course, that's personal preference, I guess.
When you go about a new, let's say, new project for a customer, how do you decide? Is it going to be AppScript? Is it going to be alternate runtime? What is your decision making?
It depends a little bit on the size of the project. Usually, when AppScript can do it, I would use AppScript, especially when it's for the customer's domain. It's really the easiest part. An important reason is to have your authentication figured out by AppScript, because you run the add-on as this person gives his own authorization and everything is fine. Deployment from an AppScript is also a bit easier because it's just point and click and fill in the right forms, and you have your AppScript running. And then you don't have to figure out code. You don't have to upload it somewhere, build your codes. It's just typing, deploying, and off you go. And I think one also interesting or important part could be transparency, because recently we delivered something to a customer and we just said, here is the script, this is the code, I can explain what it does. It's nothing secret. It's not that they should understand the code, but it's theirs. You deploy it on the customer's domain. They run it internally, and I think that's quite powerful. And we can have access and update and patch it if we need to. Especially for if the project is manageable and AppScript can run it, then we probably do AppScript.
Or what types of projects do you say those are clearly alternate runtimes? AppScript doesn't work for that. What would be like a typical project where you know AppScript can't handle that?
When there is an add-on that does some external URL calling, then you might run into limits, especially if there are a lot of users. We often use alternate runtimes because we can choose our own development environment. Because the developers want to build their development pipeline and run unit tests, have their own development tools, use, for example, TypeScript and stuff like that. And in AppScript, it's not possible. So from a developer perspective, AppScript is a little bit basic and doesn't give you like all the development opportunities you would expect. Even you can do some sort of Git and versioning, and there are some plugins, but the really good experience is when you can use your own tools. So I think for 75%, that's the main reason. And the other reason is just to have more capable solutions. Like you say, when we have different backends that should communicate with each other inside a Kubernetes pod, stuff like that, that's just better to set up with alternate runtimes. You can do a lot with AppScript, especially because everything runs for the user that actually executes it. So you have a lot of possibilities. And even when you are talking to your Google Workspace environment, and there is no real technical reason not to use AppScript. But as your project gets bigger and you have more people working on it, then you need your development environment.
Is there one specific project or a solution that you've built for a customer that you say that was the most amazing thing?
Every solution is amazing. To be honest, building something is fun, and making something work is fun. One project we started, and it was a questionnaire project where we wanted to measure for a company the different risks that were and how people were maturing and preventing risks by just asking specific questions and creating analysis for it. And this project started with spreadsheets. So for everyone, there was a spreadsheet, and we had an app script that pulled all the data and gave you a dashboard. Eventually, this grew up, so we had to use Firebase to do everything like this and to do the calculations. And that grew and was too big, so we went to BigQuery. And now it's this huge project where I think 2,000 different locations are all filling in these questionnaires and doing analysis, all running, all these data is flowing in. It's a really nice project, and it really started out with AppScript as prototyping and growing to something. And it's one of the projects I'm really proud of, and still running, still developing. And another thing that we really liked to do was building a web shop. which you think, well, there are lots of web shops available, but nothing that's really taking information from Google spreadsheets and using BigQuery to do some smart stuff. Like there is some royalty program, and you use BigQuery to calculate what's the revenue from this royalty program for each customer, and you can do some really cool things with the cloud platform. Using Google there as a sort of identity provider is something that's really easy as well. So have people log in with a Google or Firebase account.
Actually, I wanted to ask you something else. You posted on LinkedIn about the hackathon that your team did and that you built a
Mhm.
solution combining GenAI and Google Workspace. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you created there?
We wanted to try out how this Gen AI and embedding and vertex, you hear about it, but how does it really work? And we thought of something that we thought this should work when we do it. We have a support desk, of course, and in the all the years that we had Zzapps, we had a lot of customers asking questions about Google Workspace, and we have our Alain and Roy, they're perfect support employees, and they answer all these questions. And we know we have a data set in this tool that has a question and a whole set of answers, and we also know when the answer was correct, when the answer was answered. So we think when we ask an AI a workspace question, this AI should be able to fetch the answer and generate it from this information. So this hackathon was about that. In the end of it, it actually worked. So when we ask a question like these, how can I set up my printer to print with the Google Relay service? And it's just really answered, hey, you have to use this address and this is the port, and make sure that you have like this two-step verification application password set up because we mentioned it somewhere in this support tickets. And it was really amazing to see that this actually works, and it felt like this is something valuable when you know that these things are possible when you have done it yourself one time. So I would really say to people, just experiment, and that's actually I think where AppScript really is good, just to experiment something and to try out and see what it does and to get a feeling of the possibilities. Because I think for me, for a few months ago, this whole AI thing was, I see what it does, but I don't understand how it works. And once you start working with it, it just clicks and says, oh, that's not that hard.
So lately, we've been updating the chat API. We've been talking a lot about chat apps. How is it for you at Zaps? Do you see any value in that?
Yes, definitely. I think the chat interface is something very easy. Have an interface interact with people on a very low level way, because creating a chatbot, especially with AppScript, is so easy. And often we have, like for this AI we did for this whole project, you need to have something you can put your prompt in. And so, okay, let's click, let's make it a Google Apps chatbot. And then, okay, we can start asking the chatbot, and even the responses and all the results, you can get it back in a nice card. This is something that's so easy to do. It's mostly our go-to solution to show things, to test off, and even to deploy it to other customers, because people are so used to having a chat. And the nice thing I think about Chat API is that you can not only have like a normal conversation, but you can also give users an interface like buttons and things to click at just to help them in your application. And I think it's perfectly possible to build a whole application just with Google Chat. Especially now you have this new Google Chat Home function where you can really add a lot of information. I think it will replace a lot of dashboarding interface things where people really want to interact with an application. I think chat would be a good way to use. One last interesting part was having within your domain that it's now possible to have Google Chat go to people instead of persons asking a chat something. You can have a chat ask a person something. So turn it around. So as a company, you can really fetch some information from your employees at moments you need it. I think that's very interesting as well.